The escape from Zephyria Prime. The crimson warning lights bathed Jack Morrison's weathered face in an ominous glow as he stared at the control panel of the Stellar Wanderer. 3 decades of deep space exploration had taught him to read the signs, and every indicator screamed the same message: complete system failure. Fuel reserves, 0%, the ship's AI announced in its maddeningly calm voice. Backup power systems offline. Atmospheric entry imminent. Jack's fingers danced across the emergency controls, but it was futile. The twin ion drives were dead, the fusion cells had been fried by the electromagnetic storm they'd encountered near the Vega system, and now gravity was pulling his ship toward the blue-green planet below like a cosmic fisherman reeling in his catch. "Well, old girl," he muttered, patting the console, "looks like we're going down whether we want to or not." The planet filled his viewport, swirling clouds, vast oceans, and what appeared to be landmasses covered in crystalline structures that caught the light of the system's binary stars. Jack had never seen anything like it in his databases. This world wasn't on any star chart he knew. The ship shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere. Jack strapped himself in and watched the hull temperature climb. The Stellar Wanderer had been built for exploration, not crash landings, but her reinforced hull might just hold together long enough. "Come on, baby," he whispered as the ship bucked and rolled through increasingly thick air. Just a little longer. The ground rushed up to meet them. Jack caught a glimpse of towering spires and geometric gardens before the ship struck something solid. Metal screamed against crystal, sparks flew, and then everything went black. Jack woke to the sound of voices, melodic, alien voices speaking in harmonious tones that seemed to resonate in his bones. His head throbbed, and when he tried to move, he discovered his hands were bound behind his back with what felt like silk cables. "Ah, the Skyfallen One awakens," said a voice in accented but clear English. Jack opened his eyes to find himself in what could only be described as a living cathedral. The walls seemed to be made of some organic crystal that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Standing before him were 3 beings that were unmistakably alien yet hauntingly beautiful. They stood 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces that seemed carved from pearl. Their skin had an opalescent quality that shifted between blue and silver, and their eyes were large, multifaceted gems. "You speak English?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. "We speak all languages," replied the center figure, who wore robes that seemed to be woven from liquid starlight. "I am Conductor Veltar of the Resonance Council. You have violated the sacred harmony of Zephyria Prime." "Violated? I crashed here. My ship." "Your crude vessel has scarred the Song Gardens," Veltar interrupted, his voice carrying undertones that made Jack's teeth ache. "The crystalline matrices that took 3,000 cycles to grow have been shattered. The harmonic frequencies of an entire district have been disrupted." Jack struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. Through the translucent walls, he could see his ship embedded in what looked like a garden of massive, geometric crystals. Some were indeed broken, their pieces scattered like shattered glass. But he also noticed something else: his ship's hull was already being covered by what appeared to be some kind of organic growth. "Look, I'm sorry about the damage," Jack said. "But I had no choice. My ship lost power. I would have died in space." "Death comes to all things," said another figure, this one with more angular features and robes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "But some deaths serve the greater harmony. You have disrupted the resonance patterns that maintain our civilization's stability." "I can fix it," Jack said quickly. "I'm an engineer. I've worked with quantum resonance systems before. Maybe I can help repair the damage." The 3 beings exchanged glances, and Jack heard a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. He realized they were communicating in some subsonic language. "Your offer is interesting," Veltar said finally. "But the Council of Resonance has already reached its decision. You will be offered to the Void Singers at the next celestial alignment. 3 of your days." The Void Singers? They who maintain the balance between sound and silence, between existence and the spaces between notes. Your life song will be added to theirs, and perhaps the harmony you have disrupted will be restored. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. And if I refuse? There is no refusal. The harmony must be maintained. As they led him away, Jack's mind raced. 3 days. He had 3 days to figure out how to escape from a planet full of beings who could apparently kill him with sound. The situation seemed hopeless, but Jack Morrison hadn't survived 30 years in deep space by giving up easily. His cell, if it could be called that, was a spherical chamber carved from a single massive crystal. The walls were smooth as glass and hummed with a low frequency that made his bones vibrate. There were no visible doors or windows, just the gentle, persistent luminescence that seemed to come from the crystal itself. Jack explored every inch of the space, running his hands along the walls, looking for any weakness or irregularity. The crystal was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. After what felt like hours, he sat down in the center of the sphere and tried to think. The aliens, the Zephyrrians, clearly had a technology based on sound and vibration. Their entire civilization seemed to revolve around these harmonic frequencies that Veltar had mentioned. But every system had its weaknesses, and Jack had learned long ago that the more complex a system, the more ways it could fail. He was interrupted by the arrival of food, if the glowing, musical fruit could be called food. A section of the wall had simply become permeable, and a smaller Zephyrian had entered carrying a tray of the strange provisions. "You are the Skyfallen one," the being said in a voice like silver bells. Unlike the others, this one seemed young, its opalescent skin brighter and more vibrant. "I'm Jack," he replied. "What's your name?" "I am called Whisper of Growing Things. I tend the harmony gardens you have disrupted." Jack winced. "I'm sorry about that. I really had no choice." Whisper tilted its head, studying him with those multifaceted eyes. "The others say you are chaos-born, that your very presence creates discord. But I sense something else in your life song." "My life song?" "All living things create music simply by existing. Your song is strange. It does not follow our patterns, but it is not without beauty. There are harmonies in you that we do not understand." Jack leaned forward, sensing an opportunity. "Could you teach me about these harmonies? About how your people's technology works?" Whisper's skin shifted to a more golden hue. "It is forbidden to share the deep resonance with outsiders. But I'm going to die in 3 days anyway, right? What harm could it do?" The young Zephyrian was quiet for a long moment, its skin cycling through various colors. Finally, it spoke. Perhaps if you understood the harmony, your death song would be more pleasing to the Void Singers." "Yes, I think this would be acceptable." Over the next several hours, Whisper taught Jack the basics of Zephyrian harmonics. Their entire civilization was based on the principle that all matter vibrated at specific frequencies, and by manipulating these frequencies, they could control the physical world around them. The crystals in their cities were living instruments, grown over centuries to resonate at precise frequencies. The Zephyrians themselves were living tuning forks, able to generate and perceive sounds far beyond human range. "But how do you power all of this?" Jack asked. "Where does the energy come from?" "From the resonance core," Whisper replied. "It is the heart of our world, a crystalline matrix that draws energy from the planet's magnetic field and the cosmic background radiation. All of our technology is connected to it through harmonic links." Jack's engineer's mind immediately began working on the implications. A planet-wide network of connected resonance systems, all tied to a central core. It was elegant, but it also meant that the entire civilization was vulnerable to a single point of failure. "What happens if the core is damaged?" he asked casually. Whisper's skin immediately shifted to a deep, alarmed purple. "That is impossible. The core is protected by the strongest harmonic barriers our people have ever created. Nothing can penetrate them. But theoretically, if the core were damaged, all harmonic systems would fail. Our cities would crumble, our technology would cease to function. It would be the end of our civilization." Whisper paused, studying Jack with new suspicion. "Why do you ask such dark questions?" "Just curious," Jack said, but his mind was already working on a plan. It was desperate, probably suicidal, but it was better than waiting around to be fed to the Void Singers. The next day brought a new visitor. Conductor Veltar himself entered Jack's crystal prison, his starlight robes flowing around him like liquid aurora. "I have come to speak with you about your final hours," Veltar said. "The Void Singers have agreed to accept your offering, but they wish to know if you have any final words, any last song you wish to share." "Actually, I do," Jack said, standing up. "I've been thinking about what Whisper told me about harmonic resonance, and I have a proposal." Veltar's multifaceted eyes seemed to focus more intently on Jack. "Speak. You said my ship disrupted your harmonic systems. But what if I could create a new harmony? Something that not only repairs the damage but actually enhances your resonance patterns?" "Impossible. You are not of the resonance. You cannot comprehend the deep harmony." "Maybe not," Jack admitted. "But I understand quantum mechanics, and I understand wave interference patterns. Your harmonic technology is basically an incredibly sophisticated application of wave physics. Give me access to your resonance core, and I'll show you harmonies your people have never dreamed of." Veltar was quiet for a long moment. "You seek to delay your fate." "I seek to make my death meaningful," Jack lied smoothly. "If I'm going to die anyway, at least let me contribute something to your civilization. Think of it as payment for the damage I caused." The conductor's skin shifted through several colors as he considered this. "The Council will need to discuss this. But know this, Skyfallen One, any attempt to harm the resonance core will result in a death far more unpleasant than what the Void Singers have planned." "Understood," Jack said. After Veltar left, Jack allowed himself a small smile. The plan was insane, but it was starting to work. The resonance core was beyond anything Jack had imagined. Located in a vast cavern beneath the city, it was a crystalline structure the size of a skyscraper, pulsing with every color of the spectrum and several that Jack was sure human eyes weren't supposed to see. The harmonic vibrations it generated were so intense that Jack could feel them in his bones, his teeth, his very soul. "It is magnificent, is it not?" Veltar asked, standing beside Jack on the observation platform. 10,000 years of careful cultivation have created this wonder. Jack nodded, studying the structure with his engineer's eye. The core was beautiful, but he could also see its weakness. Like all resonance systems, it depended on precise frequency matching. If you could introduce the right kind of interference. "I'll need to get closer," Jack said. "To properly analyze the harmonic patterns. That is impossible. No living being except the core singers may approach the resonance matrix. Then how am I supposed to help?" Veltar gestured to a smaller crystal formation near the platform. "This is a harmonic interface. Through it, you may attempt to create your new patterns. But be warned, any dissonance will be immediately detected, and you will be terminated." Jack approached the interface, a crystalline console that hummed with potential energy. As he placed his hands on its surface, he could feel the vast harmonic network of the planet flowing through him. It was like touching the nervous system of a god. "Now," he said, closing his eyes and pretending to concentrate. "Let me see what we're working with here." What Jack was actually doing was mapping the resonance network, finding the frequency patterns that controlled the core's operation. The Zephirians had built their technology to be self-regulating, with numerous failsafes and harmonic locks. But they'd also built it to be incredibly sensitive to frequency variations. A few carefully placed interference patterns could cascade through the entire system. "I think I see the problem," Jack said aloud, while mentally preparing his sabotage. "Your harmonic matrices are operating in a steady-state resonance, but what you need is a dynamic feedback loop that can compensate for external disruptions." "Explain," Veltar said, leaning closer. "Well, when my ship crashed, it created a localized frequency disruption. Your system tried to compensate, but it could only do so within its programmed parameters. What I'm proposing is a new harmonic subroutine that can adapt to unexpected frequencies." It was complete technobabble, but it sounded plausible enough to keep Veltar interested while Jack prepared his real plan. He began generating a series of complex frequency patterns through the interface, each one designed to look like a repair protocol while actually creating microscopic flaws in the core's harmonic structure. Fascinating, Veltar murmured. These patterns are unlike anything in our harmonic texts. That's because they're based on chaos theory, Jack said, introducing another set of destabilizing frequencies. Sometimes the best way to create order is to first embrace chaos. He was walking a tightrope now. The frequencies he was generating were subtle enough to avoid triggering the core's security systems, but they were slowly building up harmonic stress throughout the crystalline matrix. In a few minutes, the accumulated interference would reach a critical threshold, and the entire core would become unstable. I must admit, Veltar said, your approach is unconventional. But I can sense new harmonies emerging in the matrix. Perhaps there is value in your chaotic methods after all. Jack nodded, continuing to work while sweat beaded on his forehead. The harmonic stress was building faster than he'd expected. He had maybe 30 seconds before the cascade failure began. There, he said, stepping back from the interface. The new harmonic subroutine is in place. You should start seeing improvements in your resonance stability within the next few minutes. Excellent. The council will be. Veltar was interrupted by a deep, thrumming sound that seemed to come from the core itself. The massive crystal structure began to pulse erratically, its colors shifting from brilliant harmony to chaotic discord. What is happening? Veltar demanded, his skin flashing through alarmed colors. I don't know, Jack lied, backing away from the interface. Maybe the system is just adjusting to the new parameters. The thrumming grew louder, and cracks began to appear in the smaller crystals surrounding the core. The harmonic cascade failure was beginning, and once it started, it would be impossible to stop. You have sabotaged the core. Veltar realized, his voice carrying harmonics of pure rage. Guards! Seize the Sky-Fallen One. But Jack was already moving. He'd studied the layout of the cavern during his harmonic analysis, and he knew there was a maintenance tunnel that led back to the surface. As alarms began to sound throughout the crystalline city, he sprinted toward the tunnel entrance. Stop him! Veltar commanded, and Jack heard the sound of pursuit behind him. The tunnel was a nightmare of twisting passages carved through living rock. Jack ran blindly through the darkness, guided only by the faint airflow that indicated the way to the surface. Behind him, he could hear the Zephyrrians calling to each other in their harmonic language, their voices echoing off the tunnel walls. The core's failure was accelerating. Even from deep underground, Jack could feel the harmonic shockwaves rippling through the planet's crust. The Zephyrians' entire technological civilization was collapsing, and he was the cause. He tried not to think about what he'd done. The Zephyrians were clearly an advanced, peaceful people who'd never done anything worse than sentence him to death for accidentally damaging their property. But he destroyed their world to save his own life, and the guilt of that would stay with him forever. The tunnel finally emerged onto the surface, and Jack found himself in the middle of chaos. The crystalline spires of the city were collapsing as their harmonic supports failed. The Zephyrians were fleeing in panic, their usually melodic voices raised in discordant cries of fear and confusion. Jack's ship was where he'd left it, still embedded in the ruined Song Gardens. The organic growth that had been covering it was now withering and falling away as the planetary harmonics failed. He reached the ship and pounded on the emergency hatch until it opened. The Stellar Wanderer's systems were still dead, but Jack had one last card to play. Every exploration ship carried an emergency beacon, a quantum entanglement communicator that could send a distress signal across interstellar distances instantaneously. He'd been saving it because it was a one-time use device, but now he had no choice. Jack activated the beacon and transmitted his location to the nearest Earth colony. Then he settled in to wait, hoping that rescue would arrive before the Zephyrians found him. The rescue ship arrived 18 hours later, its fusion drive cutting through the atmosphere like a falling star. Jack watched from his hiding spot in the ruins of the Song Gardens as the sleek vessel landed near his crashed ship. Jack Morrison, this is Captain Sarachin of the ECS Prometheus, came the voice over his comm. We received your emergency beacon. What's your status? Alive and ready to leave, Jack replied, emerging from his hiding spot. But we need to move fast. The locals aren't happy with me. As they transferred Jack's personal effects to the rescue ship, Captain Chen surveyed the devastation around them. The once magnificent Crystal City was now a field of rubble, its towering spires reduced to glittering fragments. What happened here? She asked. Our sensors are detecting massive seismic activity across the entire planet. Jack looked back at the ruins, feeling the weight of what he'd done. Their technology was more fragile than it looked. Sometimes when systems are too specialized, too perfect, they become vulnerable to the unexpected. Are there survivors? I think so. The Zephirians are tough. They'll rebuild, probably with better failsafes this time. As the Prometheus lifted off, Jack took one last look at Zephyria Prime through the viewport. In the distance, he could see small groups of Zephirians working together, their harmonious voices already beginning to create new resonance patterns in the debris of their city. They're remarkable people, he said quietly. I hope someday they'll forgive me for what I had to do. Captain Chen studied his expression. You want to tell me what really happened down there? Jack was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes survival requires us to do terrible things. I destroyed their world to save my own life. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not apologetic about it either. That's what it means to be human, I guess. We're survivors, even when survival comes at a terrible cost. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying Jack away from Zephyria Prime and back to the familiar chaos of human space, he wondered if the Zephirians would remember him as a monster or simply as a force of nature, chaotic, destructive, but ultimately part of the universe's grand symphony. Behind them, on the wounded planet, Whisper of Growing Things stood in the ruins of the Song Gardens and listened to the new harmonies beginning to emerge from the chaos. The Skyfallen One had been right about one thing. Sometimes the most beautiful music came from embracing the discord, learning to find harmony in the spaces between the notes. The Zephirians would rebuild, and when they did, their new civilization would be stronger, more resilient, more ready for the unexpected. In destroying their perfect world, Jack had perhaps given them something even more valuable, the knowledge that perfection was fragile, but adaptability was eternal. And in the depths of space, aboard the Prometheus, Jack Morrison stared out at the stars and wondered what other worlds were out there, what other civilizations might one day need to learn the hard lessons that only chaos could teach. 3 weeks later, Jack sat in the debriefing room at Kepler Station, facing a panel of colonial administration officials. The sterile white walls and harsh fluorescent lighting were a stark contrast to the organic beauty of Zephyria Prime, but Jack found the familiar human environment oddly comforting. Let me get this straight, said Administrator Williams, a thin woman with steel-gray hair and calculating eyes. You're telling us that you single-handedly destroyed an entire alien civilization's infrastructure? I disabled their primary power system, Jack corrected. The Zephirians are still alive. They're just going to have to rebuild using more conventional technology. And you did this to escape execution? I did this to survive, Jack said firmly. They were going to kill me for accidentally damaging their property. I had every right to defend myself. Commander Torres, the station's military liaison, leaned forward. What can you tell us about their defensive capabilities? Their weapons systems? Jack shook his head. They don't have weapons, at least not in any conventional sense. Their entire technology is based on harmonic resonance. They could probably kill someone with sound waves, but I never saw any evidence of military applications. A pacifist species, mused Dr. Yamoto, the xenobiologist on the panel. How fascinating. And you say they could manipulate matter through sound? Through precisely controlled frequencies, yes. Their entire civilization was like a vast musical instrument. Every building, every tool, every piece of technology was grown from living crystals that could be tuned to specific resonance patterns. Administrator Williams made a note on her tablet. And now that technology is gone. The central core that powered it is gone. But the Zephirians understand the principles. They'll rebuild, probably with better safeguards against the kind of cascade failure I caused. Which brings us to the real question, Williams said, fixing Jack with a cold stare. Are you a hero or a war criminal? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Jack had asked himself the same thing every day since leaving Zephyria Prime. I'm a survivor, he said finally. I made a choice between my life and their convenience. Maybe that makes me selfish, but it doesn't make me a criminal. Their convenience? Dr. Yamato looked shocked. You destroyed their entire technological civilization. A civilization that was going to murder me for an accident, Jack shot back. I'm sorry for the collateral damage, but I'm not sorry for refusing to die quietly. Commander Torres studied Jack's file. Your record shows 30 years of peaceful first contact missions. No hostile actions, no violations of the colonial non-interference protocol. This is completely out of character. Desperate times, Jack said. I've never been sentenced to death before. Administrator Williams closed her tablet with a sharp click. The Colonial Administration is prepared to offer you a choice, Mr. Morrison. You can accept a formal reprimand and mandatory psychological evaluation, after which you'll be reassigned to non-contact exploration duties. Or you can face a full tribunal for violations of the non-interference protocol. Jack considered his options. A tribunal could mean anything from a slap on the wrist to life imprisonment, depending on how the political winds were blowing. The safe choice was obvious. I'll take the reprimand, he said. Good. Report to Dr. Hendricks in Medical Base 7 tomorrow at 0800 for your evaluation. Dismissed. As Jack stood to leave, Dr. Yamato caught his arm. Mr. Morrison, would you be willing to provide more detailed information about Zephyrine biology and culture? For scientific purposes, of course. Jack looked at the earnest young scientist and felt a pang of guilt. Doctor, I spent less than a week on their planet, most of it in a prison cell. I'm probably not the best source of information. But you're the only source we have, she pressed. Any data you can provide could be invaluable for future contact protocols. Future contact? Jack frowned. I thought the planet was quarantined. For now, yes. But the Colonial Administration is already planning a return mission. A proper first contact, with xenobiologists and diplomats instead of. She gestured apologetically. Well, instead of crashed explorers. Jack felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They're going back? Of course. A harmonic-based technology could revolutionize human civilization. The potential applications are limitless. And the Zephyrians? What about their feelings on the matter? Dr. Yamato looked confused. I'm sure they'll be eager to establish trade relations. Think of what we could learn from each other. Jack wanted to laugh, but it came out as more of a bitter cough. Doctor, I doubt the Zephyrians are interested in making friends with the species that destroyed their world. But that was an accident. No, Jack interrupted. It was sabotage. I deliberately destroyed their power system to create chaos during my escape. They know exactly what I did and why I did it. If humans show up on Zephyria Prime claiming to want peaceful relations, they're going to remember that the last human visitor was me. He left Dr. Yamato looking troubled and made his way to the station's observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the swirling nebula that gave Kepler Station its spectacular view. But all Jack could think about was the ruins of the Crystal City and the sound of Zephyrian voices raised in harmonious lament. The psychological evaluation was conducted by Dr. Sarah Hendricks, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes who specialized in deep space trauma. Her office was decorated with holographic landscapes from a dozen worlds, creating a calming environment that Jack appreciated more than he cared to admit. Tell me about the dreams, Dr. Hendricks said, making notes on her tablet. Every night, Jack admitted. I hear their voices, their harmonic languages. Sometimes I dream I'm still in that crystal prison, and sometimes I dream that I'm back in the cavern watching their core collapse. How do you feel in these dreams? Jack was quiet for a moment. Guilty. Terrified. But also, relieved. I'm alive because I made a hard choice, and I can't bring myself to regret that. Do you think you could have found another way to escape? I've thought about that every day for 3 weeks. Maybe if I'd had more time, or if I'd understood their technology better. But I was scheduled for execution in 3 days, and I was running out of options. Dr. Hendricks nodded sympathetically. Survival situations often force us to make choices we wouldn't normally consider. There's no shame in choosing to live. Then why do I feel like there is? Because you're human, she said simply. Empathy is part of what makes us who we are. The fact that you feel guilty about the consequences of your actions shows that you're not a sociopath. You're just someone who was put in an impossible situation. But what if I'm wrong? Jack asked. What if there was another way, and I just didn't see it because I was too scared to think clearly? Would it change anything if there was? Jack considered this. No. I'd still be alive, and their core would still be destroyed. But maybe I'd feel less like a monster. Jack, I want you to consider something. You've spent 30 years making peaceful contact with alien species. You've helped establish trade relations with the Centauri Alliance. You've mediated disputes between the vegan colonies and the Rigel Confederation. Your entire career has been dedicated to building bridges between different species. Does one act of self-defense erase all of that? It does if it starts a war. Dr. Hendricks frowned. What makes you think it might start a war? Jack told her about his conversation with Dr. Yamato, about the planned return mission to Zephyria Prime. As he spoke, he watched her expression grow increasingly concerned. That's problematic, she said finally. You're right to be worried. The Zephyrians are likely to view any human presence as a threat, given what happened. So what do I do? Well, first, you pass this evaluation with flying colors. You're psychologically sound, just dealing with normal guilt and trauma from a survival situation. Second, you make sure the right people know about the potential complications of returning to Zephyria Prime. Who are the right people? Dr. Hendricks smiled grimly. Leave that to me. I have some contacts in the diplomatic corps who need to hear about this. 2 days later, Jack found himself in another conference room, this one with a much more impressive group of officials. Admiral Hayes, the commanding officer of the colonial fleet, sat at the head of the table. Ambassador Liu, the colonial administration's chief diplomat, was reviewing a stack of reports. Dr. Yamato was there too, looking nervous. Mr. Morrison, Admiral Hayes began, Dr. Hendricks has brought some concerns to our attention regarding the planned return mission to Zephyria Prime. We'd like to hear your assessment of the situation. Jack took a deep breath. Admiral, I think sending humans back to that planet would be a mistake. The Zephyrians are peaceful, but they're not stupid. They know I sabotaged their core deliberately, and they're going to assume that any humans who show up are either there to finish the job or to exploit their weakness. But surely they'd understand that you were acting alone, Ambassador Liu interjected. That your actions don't represent human policy. Would you? Jack asked. If aliens crashed on Earth, destroyed our power grid, and then more aliens showed up a few months later claiming to want friendship, what would you think? The ambassador was quiet for a moment. I see your point. Dr. Yamato leaned forward. But the scientific value of their harmonic technology will still be there in 50 years, Jack interrupted. Or 100. The Zephyrians live for centuries. Give them time to rebuild, to heal, to forget what I did to them. Then maybe they'll be ready to talk. Admiral Hayes studied Jack carefully. You're suggesting we abandon the mission entirely? I'm suggesting we postpone it. Wait until they've had time to recover, and then approach them with genuine offers of assistance. Help them rebuild what I destroyed. Show them that humans can be builders as well as destroyers. And in the meantime, we give up the opportunity to study their technology. Jack felt his temper flare. Admiral, their technology isn't going anywhere. But if we push too hard, too fast, we could turn a peaceful species into an enemy. Is that really worth the risk? The room was quiet for several minutes as the officials considered his words. Finally, Ambassador Liu spoke. Mr. Morrison, if we were to postpone the mission, Would you be willing to serve as an advisor on future contact protocols? Your first-hand experience with the Zephirians could be invaluable. Jack hadn't expected that. Yes, I suppose I could do that. But I'd want guarantees that any future contact would be genuinely peaceful. No hidden agendas, no exploitation. You have my word, the ambassador said solemnly. Admiral Hayes nodded. Very well. The Zephyria Prime mission is postponed indefinitely. Dr. Yamato, I want you to prepare a comprehensive report on alternative methods for studying harmonic technology. Maybe we can develop our own applications without needing alien assistance. As the meeting broke up, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than watching humans make the same mistakes he'd made. Dr. Yamato approached him as they left the conference room. I want you to know, Mr. Morrison, that I understand why you did what you did. And I think you're right about waiting. The Zephirians deserve better from us. Thank you, Doctor. That means a lot. I have one more question, though. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? Forgive you? Jack thought about Whisper of Growing Things, about the young Zephirians' curiosity and kindness. I think they might. They're a remarkable people. If anyone can find harmony in chaos, it's them. 6 months later, Jack stood on the bridge of the Deep Explorer, watching the stars stream past as the ship jumped through hyperspace. His new assignment was mapping the Outer Rim territories, far from any inhabited worlds. It was exactly the kind of quiet, non-contact work that suited him now. Captain Rodriguez, the ship's commander, joined him at the observation port. Still thinking about that planet? Every day, Jack admitted. I keep wondering what they're doing now, how they're rebuilding. Maybe someday you'll find out. Maybe. But not for a long time. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the cosmic dance of distant stars. Jack had learned to live with his choices, to accept that survival sometimes came at a price. But he'd also learned that the universe was vast enough to contain both his guilt and his hope. Somewhere out there, on a blue-green world orbiting twin stars, the Zephirians were probably growing new crystals, creating new harmonies, rebuilding their civilization with the hard-won knowledge that perfection was fragile but resilience was eternal. And somewhere else, in the depths of space, human explorers were learning to be more careful, more thoughtful, more aware of the consequences of their actions. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of second chances. Jack Morrison had learned that lesson the hard way, and he planned to spend the rest of his life making sure it wasn't forgotten. As the Deep Explorer continued its journey into the unknown, Jack allowed himself a small smile. There were still worlds to discover, still species to meet, still bridges to build between the stars. And maybe, just maybe, someday there would be a chance to make things right with the Zephirians. But for now, it was enough to be alive, to be exploring, to be moving forward through the endless dark toward whatever wonders awaited in the depths of space. The universe was vast and full of music, and Jack Morrison was finally learning to listen.